ละค่ะและสำหรับนะคะในช่วงนี้นะคะเดี๋ยวก่อนที่เราจะได้ไปชมนะคะภาพยนตร์กันนั้นนะคะเดี๋ยวเรายังมีอีกหนึ่งเซกชันนั่นเองค่ะซึ่งสำหรับในเซกชันต่อจากนี้นะคะจะเป็นในเรื่องราวของ plumbing for AI film creator นั่นเองค่ะซึ่งวันนี้นะคะสปีกเกอร์ของเราก็เป็นชาวต่างชาตินะคะที่จะมาพูดคุยกันนะคะสำหรับในเซกชันนี้เดี๋ยวเราจะมีการบรรยายกันก่อนนะคะ1 ชั่วโมงนะคะแล้วเราจะมีการเบรกประมาณ20 นาทีตรงนี้สามารถไปรีแลกซ์ได้หรือว่าสามารถที่จะถามส่วนตัวได้นะคะแล้วเดี๋ยวเราจะกลับมานะคะทำการพรีเซนต์กันอีกก็จะครบ2 ชั่วโมงนั่นเองค่ะโอเค and now may I invite Mr. Aaron Charlamos to speak on plumbing for AI film creator ขอเสียงปรบมือต้อนรับด้วยค่ะ
Mind if I turn the chair just a little bit so I can see what I'm doing? Okay. Okay. Check. Mic check. All right, thank you guys for being here for our presentations and listening. I have a really long block of 2 hours. So my presentation is going to be primarily focused on, we're talking about prompting and how we're using AI. So my focus today was to make sure where do I point this? Which one is it? Down. Here. Where? Nope. Okay. Yes. So my goal is to tell you guys that I found the 30 best ChatGPT prompts for 2025, and I put it all together in a big book with 3,550 ChatGPT prompts for you, which I did not. This is a lot of the hype that we get about prompting. Everybody's always putting out prompting guides and trying to tell you that there's an easy recipe to prompting. But that's not really what it is. Prompting isn't, there's no magical solution to prompting. So what I wanted to do is, let me give you a bit of a background of myself. I am Aaron Che Ramos. That's me. I was actually working on the set of Alien Earth as a virtual production producer. And I'm primarily these 4 roles. I'm a technical director. So a technical director works on any type of new technology incorporated in the film production process. So I work with Unreal Engine, game engines, tracking systems. We've integrated haptic systems. Any kind of new technology that a film company wants to try and use, they'll often talk to me. I do the research, I put together the team, and we integrate it into the film process. I'm a VFX supervisor and a producer, so I work on films, commercials, supervising on set, or working directly with the art teams that produce all of the assets for virtual production. I'm also an XR designer, so I work with virtual reality, mixed reality. I have a company that I started in China where we develop training solutions for medical, for heavy equipment, a lot of different things like that, that it gives you a much more interactive experience and allows you to understand the spatial relationship of things. And so it's a more effective tool for learning. And finally, I'm a writer. I like to write horror and science fiction. It's mostly as a hobby, but recently I've also been writing a lot of different scripts, primarily for micro-series dramas. They're very dramatic, over the top, a lot of swinging of, well, a lot of slapping, especially in the Chinese dramas. And yeah, so I enjoy these as my bread and butter and my main hobbies. So if you do want to contact me for any of these things, you can reach out to me at originpoint.media, aaron@legacy.film, or you can hit me up on Instagram. So back to my original point about prompting. Now, those big guides that give you all of the prompts, the thing that they really fail to do is it's like giving someone a dictionary for a language, right? It doesn't really help you learn the language. I mean, you could start to memorize words, but if you don't have a way of really communicating with person, you can't really functionally use that you can't really use that information to achieve your goals. So what the most important thing in prompting is communication. And communication is all about getting your ideas across, right? So whatever we have in here, we're trying to get it out to the person we're communicating with. So communication comes down to 3 key pillars, okay? So the first being know your audience. Who are you talking to? It's very important to understand that if I'm talking to a group of doctors, right? We have a very specific language that we use. We have very specific terms for our industry. So we would use medical language very commonly. If I'm talking to technical artists, CG artists, so we're talking about shaders and we're talking about faces, and these types of terms are very specific to the communication between us and understanding. So it's important to know who you're talking to be able to create a fluid conversation and communication. The second one is providing context, and the last one is setting clear goals. So again, context is just more information. The more information you have, the better you're able to communicate. And the goal, as humans, when we do talk, every time we talk, there's intention behind our words. We have a goal. We're speaking for a reason. So I'm going to take all of this and help us to understand how to prompt and how to communicate with an AI to be more successful at however we're using the AI. Because, again, this was for film production. And film production is very, very diverse. It's, of course, we have a lot of focus on image generation, video generation, and how we can use it for video. But there's a lot of different roles in film production. You have your writers, you have your actors, you have production design, you have your director, your cameraman. All of these different roles are crucial to the whole process. And AI is a tool that everybody can be using. So the first thing we want to talk about is know your audience. So I'm sure a lot of people, like, this has been said a lot, like, what is an AI and what's an LLM? And I want to kind of break it down actually in really, really, really simple terms to make it as digestible as possible. So the term we often hear is a neural network, right? So a neural network is very much like our brains. It's modeled after how our brains function. So the key thing about a neural network is how it stores information. And so in an LLM, you're training it. You're exposing it to information. And it's no different from how we learn. And every time it gets a piece of information again and again and again, it learns more that relationship. So here's an interesting thing. In developmental psychology, there was a study that was looking at language learning. And it looked at all the different types of languages that are out there. And it was looking at the sounds that people hear, the phonemes, all of the different parts of the words in the language. And so they were looking at how a baby learns and develops its language learning. And one of the fascinating things that they found is that as you get older, you actually lose the ability to hear certain sounds. So there's some languages that have very specific sounds that you cannot hear if you weren't raised hearing that sound. Your brain literally deletes it. And you won't hear it. And only a native speaker or someone who was raised hearing that sound would instantly hear it in the language. So it's this exposure, this constant exposure to something that trains you to what it is. So this is where we get into the concept of weights. When something has a lot of weight, it has more meaning. And so a neural network, the output that comes out is based on probability. And whatever's possibly next would be the thing that has the most weight. And the easiest way to understand this is your everyday conversation. So whenever we talk to each other, whenever we're formulating sentences, we're not reading a script. We're not thinking of the words and then saying them. It's a very fluid, continuous motion where the information just flows out of us, right? There's how you could almost say there's very little work involved consciously to determine what we're going to be saying. I'm literally making most of what I'm saying up right now. I have the general goal of what I want to accomplish. I understand the audience that I'm speaking to, and I know I have to provide specific information. So the word that follows the word that I just said it's not, how can I say it? I'm trying to think of the word that comes out is improbable, but yes, it's much like music, right? When you're playing notes on a piano, every note has a note that sounds pretty good right after it, right? And you can try and play some notes, and you'll hit a note that it just doesn't work. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't belong. So what you're doing is after you have a couple notes, the next note, it needs to have some relationship to the previous notes. So we know the notes that don't work, and so we can choose from the notes that work. Then we can add more information to our goal, like do we want it to sound happier or upbeat? Do we want it to be more slower or sadder? And so we can start to choose the next note based on our goals. So the output is, in a sense, kind of predetermined. It's very fluid. The notes that will come will just naturally have to be one of the ones that are coming out. So with a neural network, when we have these words and they have these different associations, they are able to determine what should be the most probabilistic next word. So the interesting thing with like our language and how our language builds words and meaning is it's very, very diverse. It's very, very complicated. And one of the things I actually think was very interesting early on in how we challenged LLMs was that it couldn't do math. So I think one of the very funny things is how we do math in our own heads, right? Because we have a functioning neural network. So when we learned multiplication, we were memorizing these tables. We were looking at these relationships, and we learned what those relationships were repeatedly over and over and over again. So we were trained to very specific outputs. That's how we learned multiplication. We don't calculate it most of the time. We remember the answers. Now, the interesting thing is, if you think of 1 plus 1, it's supposed to equal 2, right? But if I said 1 plus 1 does not equal 2, the reason why this is significant is if you Google this, you're going to see a lot of information about this. You're going to see TED Talks, you're going to see YouTube videos, you're going to see people that discuss 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2, right? So since the LLM is trained on massive amounts of information and data, it's been exposed to this. So that means it is not a non-zero probability that 1 plus 1 always equals 2. In the training data, it can see there's a lot of chances, like there's many times in the data it showed up that 1 plus 1 is 2. But there was some times where it didn't. Somebody said it didn't. So because it's not doing math, it's not an algorithmic system, it's probabilistic. So the highest probability is that 1 plus 1 equals 2. But it's just a probability. It is very possible that it doesn't equal 2 because there's people out there who've talked about it. So this is one of the things to understand about how our audience, how our LLM is working, how it's thinking, how it's processing information. So the next thing we want to talk about is context. And context is very important for communication. A very common example that I like to give is, I was just discussing earlier how like the word Michael and Michelle, it's a name, it's spelled about the same. There's plenty of people who are named Michael. The name by itself has no meaning. It's a name. It's someone's name. It could be Michael. It could be a man's name. It could be a woman's name. It's just a name. But if we start adding context, just 2 words, basketball and Nike. Now the name Michael has a very specific meaning, right? This is Michael Jordan. And everybody's able to pick up very easily on that because we've given it context. We gave it more meaning to that originally very broad, meaningless word. So for context, it's all a matter of providing information. So I wanted to try a really quick
โอเคค่ะเมื่อสักครู่นี้นะคะที่ได้ยกตัวอย่างกันไปนะคะก็เดี๋ยวเมย์สรุปให้คร่าวๆฟังในเรื่องของทางด้าน context ละกันนะคะบางท่านเพิ่งมาก็จะพูดในเรื่องของความสำคัญค่ะว่า context นะคะก็คือเป็นสิ่งที่เราต้องการที่จะสื่อให้กับ audience นะคะอย่างเช่นสมมุติว่าถ้าเราพูดyou example the Michael right the example Michael
Yes.
basketball โอเค
Yes.
ค่ะอย่างสมมติว่ายกตัวอย่างถ้าเกิดว่าเราให้ข้อมูลให้ inform ไปเพียงแค่คำว่าแบบ Michael คุณจะตอบได้ไหมว่า Michael คืออะไรตอบได้ไหม ไม่ได้ใช่ไหมมันน้อยไปแล้วถ้าเราให้มากไปกว่านั้นสมมุติว่าลองลิงก์กันนะคะ Michael basketball on
Both
and
basketball.
basketball เดาได้ไหมคะว่ามันคืออะไรลองเดาดูMichael basketball ตอนนี้มีใครลองเดาดูผิดไม่ว่าแค่จะอะไรนะคะ MBA เพราะว่าพอเราให้ข้อมูลที่มากขึ้น audience เราก็จะมีความเข้าใจมากขึ้นลอง for more example
So I'm thinking of a story. And so the story is, I want you to guess what the story is. So the story is about a boy who lives on an island, and he goes on a boat on an adventure.
Okay, stop. ลองเดาดูว่านี้จะเป็นเรื่องอะไรนะคะเด็กผู้ชายที่อยู่เกาะแล้วก็ออกเรือไปมีใครพอจะเดาได้ไหมคะว่าตั้งใจจะสื่อเรื่องอะไรลองเดาดูเด็กผู้ชายออกจากเกาะซึ่งคิดว่าไม่มีใครตอบได้หรอกเพราะว่าให้ข้อมูลน้อยมากแต่ลองเดาดูได้คิดว่าเป็นอะไรคะคิดว่าเป็นอะไรเด็กผู้ชายออกจากเกาะ One Piece Oh impossible
He got it.
Yeah
So, but the point was, he shouldn't have had to think about it. He was thinking, and he was trying to decipher. If we said, yes, there's a boy who goes on a trip on an island, it's very vague. It doesn't have a lot of context. It doesn't have a lot of information. If we say the boy has a straw hat, now some people might start to get it. Actually, he got it, but we have a lot of people in the audience. There's a lot of other people who were listening, and they still had no idea what this story was. But then if we start giving it more, he loves pirates. Yes, and he wants to become the pirate king, and he has a Netflix adaptation. Then you automatically start to see what we're talking about. We're giving it a lot of context, a lot of information to help support the idea. So the story that was in my head that I wanted to share, now we've got the whole story. We have the whole context. We have the whole pieces of information. So for context, this is really, really important for us to be able to understand how to express our own ideas and our own concepts that we want to put out, right? So one of the things that I constantly take advantage of is just it's research. It's understanding the subject, the topic that I want to discuss, that I want to explain. And currently we have that's a big feature that was added to a lot of the LLMs is the deep research function. So you're able to create a full document, a research document that has citations and all the resources. So you can go in and you can look at that paper, you can read the paper, and you can understand it, even the topic that you want to discuss, even further. So that way, the more you understand it, the better you can explain it and you can express it. But ultimately, you can give this document to the AI, and you can tell the AI, based on this document, now you have all of this context. This is what we're going to be talking about. So it's really, really important that whenever we do want to prompt, that we're giving as much information to provide all of this context, all of this background and reference, so that the AI really, really knows what we're talking about. When I tried it earlier, actually with Maya, I told her the story, and then I brought up pirates, and she said the Pirates of the Caribbean, which, again, she couldn't be wrong. That's what she thinks I'm asking about, right? Because I'm talking about a boy on an island, on a boat, and he loves pirates. So it's reasonable for her to make that kind of guess. But the failure was on my part, so I can't say you're wrong. because I just didn't provide enough information for her to give me the answer that I was expecting, that I was looking for. So early on, that was a big problem with a lot of people's interactions with AI. They were frustrated because they were asking it for something and it wasn't giving them what they were expecting, what they were trying to get out of it. And even myself, I study this. I work with a lot of AI models. I find myself getting frustrated and angry at why is the AI doing this? Like it's like you're trying to fight me, and that's the thing. I have to always stop and step back and think, okay, what am I doing wrong? What am I failing to provide the AI with enough information to get me where I want to go? So I go back and I look at this and I think about, okay, I got to remember, what am I, this thing that I'm talking to, how does it work? Context, making sure I'm giving it proper context. And ultimately, having that goal of that output, right? So this is where we get to a lot of the structure that we add to prompts, where we shouldn't, well, we sometimes do leave it very open-ended, and that's fine. That could be our goal. Our goal sometimes is we don't know what we want. And if working in the media industry, like that's something that's very common that we get from working with clients. Like they want something cool, or they'll give us our work back and they say like, yeah, just make it more beautiful, and we don't know what that is. And sometimes though that can be helpful to know what you don't want. So your goals sometimes can be open-ended, and it can give you a bunch of, it's going to be garbage. It's going to be a bunch of random things that are probably mostly unusable. But it will give you a better understanding of what you want. And that way you can go back and look at it. But also, if you do have a very clear goal, if as a VFX supervisor, I wanted to look at the script and pull out all of the VFX shots in the script, and I want you to lay out the shots. I want you to tell me, like in duration of frames, about how many frames are going to be required for it. I want you to, give me an estimate on the amount of people who are going to have to work on it. I can ask a lot of very, very specific questions to get to the goal that I want, the output, the very specific output that I want to get. So when you start with your idea or the thing that you want to work on, you want to really, really break it down. You don't want to go very, very broad. You want to have a very clear goal of what are you trying to accomplish. If you're going to give it too many things to do at once, it's not going to give you a really, really great result. So for writing, one of the things that I like to do is I do like to break it down into just the basic idea, right? What's the idea of the story? But a story is very, very rich, and it's very, very complicated. It has a lot of characters, it has a lot of dialogue, it has a lot of the world that exists, that these people exists in. So you can, once you have your core concept, you can start looking at your main characters, and you can start fleshing them out, understanding who your main characters are, and building up their backgrounds, their motivations. And we can start breaking down our story beats, how we're moving our main character through the story, how we're keeping them how we're keeping the audience engaged in the journey of the main characters. And the whole time you're always going to be refining your prompts, because any of these is going to give you, again, how the AI works, again, is probabilistic. It's creating concepts and ideas and just patterns of words. But they don't have the intention that you do. So when you see the ideas, you can mold them better to the intention that you want to accomplish, the goal that you want to accomplish, the story you want to tell. So using these ideas, what you develop is clarity. Clarity between you and the AI, and clarity between you and your audience. You have a very general idea. Give me a cool idea for something, or for how to market something. Again, it's so broad. It's not very, very specific. But then you start refining it. Give me a 500-word blog. Like, that's very, very specific. It's something. A blog has a lot of context. It's usually written by specialists who write on their websites and teach people about their niche subject. 500 words gives it a boundary, so it knows how to give you not too much, not too little. Digital marketing strategies. So we're looking at digital, like specifically. We're not looking at print and paper. It gives it, again, more target. It knows what you want. Small businesses, again, narrowing it down, targeting millennials. So all of this gives it a lot of context to understand what it is that you want. It's not going to talk about people outside of the millennial generations. It's not going to talk about corporations. It's going to give you exactly what you want. So, let's see. Oh, this is a long talk. So, I wanted to share a couple stories that I worked on and how I formulated these stories using AI. And I thought it was a very unique journey that I'm very, very happy to share, and how I collaborated with this AI to develop the stories that I wrote. So I'm trying to think of which one to start with first. Yeah, let's do dichotomy. So dichotomy again, I mentioned that I like to write science fiction and horror, and I like to write a lot of little short stories. A few years back, I had a hobby of just writing one story every day, just whatever, just write a story. And I really enjoy it, and I really enjoy the storytelling process. And as a filmmaker, I'm always very interested in how would I bring this story to life. So one of the things I wanted to explore was how do I use the AI to come up with an idea for a story that's very easy to produce and shoot and make, like on a low budget with a small crew, something that's very easy to make. So I started the whole journey of first, giving it the context. I don't want anything that's going to be crazy VFX. The story can't have too much fancy sci-fi and just too many complicated shots. It needs to be simple and achievable. Ideally, like even in one location would be the best. So I really love older movies that were like that, where the story is just focused on the characters and the people, and the location itself is just a background. It's not really important to driving the story, but the story is so interesting because of the people and the situation and the drama. So I gave it this kind of context for the story that I wanted. And it's gave me 10 different ideas. And so I was going through the ideas, and there was 2 of them that stood out to me. There was one about a couple who goes into a garden, and in the garden they were seeing, they're almost like visions or hallucinations of different peoples in their lives, and I was like, okay, the garden setting is kind of simple, but I just wasn't feeling it. Then there was one story that really caught my attention because it was uniquely bad. So it was about a girl who, she finds this house and she goes into the house, and the house has many mirrors everywhere in the house. And as she goes and she looks in the mirror, she's seeing herself in different past events. And it's kind of reflecting on her previous character. Like how we all grow up and we change. We're different people as we grow. And so she's coming to terms with who she was in the past and all of these things that she did. I thought, like, yeah, it's an interesting story, and it has something there. But I'm a horror writer. I want it to be scary. I want it to be more what could be more thrilling. This is just seeing your past, and yeah, I didn't. But this gave me an idea. If you're seeing, yes, if I saw my past and I saw like, I was a crummy person, like that's yes, we all reflect. But what if I saw my future and I saw that I was a bad person? Like something that like I couldn't believe I would be that person. That would challenge me. That would challenge my concept of me. And with time and with things being in the future, it gives it like an inevitable ending. You know, it's like you're going to experience this. You're going to be this despicable, horrible, evil person. And if you're a good person, it creates so much conflict in you. It's like, how could I ever be that? So I started writing the story of Dichotomy, where I took, this is actually, I used the AI to do storyboards on it. And this is an actress friend of mine. Her name is Pear. She's Thai, and after I wrote this, I felt like she was perfect for it because she has a lot of passion and expressiveness that I think this character was perfect for. So in the story, she's in her lab, she's working, and a brick comes flying through her window. And she gets this, she finds an envelope tied to it, and it's got a USB drive. So she takes that USB drive. On the envelope it says, watch me. So she puts it into her computer, and she starts playing the video, and it's security footage of her office, and it's the security cameras right there. It's from the camera that's in her office, and she's seated there at her desk, and she's watching herself, and she shuts the computer and she stands up, and then she's kind of pacing. There's no audio, so she's wondering, but because she doesn't recognize it, she didn't see this, and so she hadn't done this, and then she looks at the time code on it, and she sees that it's like 30 minutes from now, and she kind of starts scrubbing through it, and then she sees her business partner walk into the office. He has some papers. They start to argue. She's like pleading with him. He looks at the broken window. She looks at the rock. She looks at the envelope. She picks up the rock. And then she murders him. She just starts killing him. And she suddenly, like, she slams the notebook shut, stands up. And so this is where I've created that tension, the drama, now she's faced with, she doesn't believe she's a murderer. She doesn't think she could possibly ever do this. So she's confronted with becoming this person. And so I have the character go through almost like the stages of grief and denial and everything, like someone who's facing inevitable death. And ultimately, in the story, the business partner does come in. She tries to plead with him, like, please, we have to talk. But he's frustrated. He's really angry, and he's like, "You've been committing fraud. You've been stealing all this money from our investors for this crazy quantum time project of yours that we rejected a long time ago." And like she's like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "No, the evidence is all here. And so he's accusing her, and she's trying to like go through everything in her head, and she finally looks at the envelope, and she's holding the papers, and she sees her signature on the papers, and it just like clicks that it's her writing. And so she's just like, "Oh, I did it." So the whole twist is like she, in the future, figures out time travel. She sent this thing back to her. So it's a short story. Probably a little bit cheesy, but this is the moment of realization where she feels like, I'm going to get away with it. So she comes to terms with, like, actually the whole time she was in denial that she's a bad person, but now you realize, like, she's actually been committing fraud and all these things. And so she's not a good person. And, that's where the story ends. So this is a completely original story that I wrote, but I would have never come up with that idea if I didn't get the whole mirror concept from my original talk with the AI. So this is one of those situations where I say it's very helpful sometimes when you don't know what you want, and it's good to get bad ideas, and it's good for you to understand what you don't want. It can kind of help you dial in and get inspiration for the direction you want to go with something. Now, the other poolside bet. This was a very interesting new technique that I started using because I've been working recently on the vertical micro series. So the vertical micro series is usually these they came up on TikTok. They grew up from China, and they're all these really, really short episodes, usually multi episodes, 50, 60 episodes long, but each one's only like a minute and a half, and they're very formulaic in the drama. That you have a very, very quick hook in like the first 3 seconds that makes you interested in the story. And the hooks keep coming. Every single episode ends like on a cliffhanger. And it starts with a little bit of a payoff, but it also keeps building the drama. And so the very, very first thing I actually did was I did a deep research on the micro series. And I told the AI to give me all the tropes for the micro series. Give me all the different types, the character types, right? The rich billionaire, the secret. Oh God, there's so many of them. I can't really think, but there's all the different character types. The mom who doesn't believe the daughter, the stepsister who's trying to sleep with the husband, it it was pretty fun. It gave me all of the different archetypes of the different characters. I also asked for the different types of stories. So there's like the revenge story. There's the again, the secret billionaire who, like, he's trying to keep his identity hidden, but a lot of the fairy tale princess, like the poor girl gets saved by the prince. So they're very, very formulaic. Very, very common themes are reused over and over again. And so the last thing that I had it look for was the hooks. What are the types of hooks and the mechanisms in the story for the hooks that that are used to keep the people engaged and watching. So once I had this whole thing, it researched for, it did a really good job. It was reaching almost half an hour, and created this PDF. I read the PDF, and then I gave it the PDF, and I actually moved to a new condo, and I really liked some of the facilities at the condo. And I thought, like, oh, it would be really cool if I could just shoot like a little micro series here. And so I took some of the pictures. So like we have this rooftop pool area. It has like really nightclub vibes. Some of the lounge areas, very like kind of high-so looking, very high floor, big glass windows. So I took these, we have a kitchen area that has almost like a bar as well. So I took all of these photos and I gave them all to the AI. And I gave the AI also the document. And then I asked it to give me 10 story ideas that would work at this location, that follow the traditional rules of the microseries drama. And so it was going through all of the different ideas, and there was a couple that I thought were pretty good, but there was one that I kind of saw that it had a lot more potential. So in the story, it's about this rich luxury pool club, and it's a one night. It all takes place in one night. The girl, she's a bartender, and there's a wager that's being held across the billionaires, and she is the subject of the wager. Like, they're wagering her because she has a lot of debt, and so if she loses, she becomes, they own her. But if she wins, they'll erase all her debt. But the challenge is she has to destroy one of the billionaires, this guy. He's a cold, rich guy. But he's secretly in love with her. And so he's kind of caught between, he wants to help her and he wants to save her because he's in love with her, but he also is going to get destroyed. And then there's another character who's like a big MC of the whole event, and she uses social media to like influence everybody, and she can cancel billionaires. And so, yes, we're leaning into all of the different tropes and the different styles of telling the story and creating more and more and more drama. And so, I'm working on this one still currently, and I keep writing and building on it. But I really loved how easy it was to take just the photos and ask it to give me story ideas based on this location. So a lot of times, if you're planning to do a film, if you're planning to tell a story, you need to find out what the constraints are for what you're trying to accomplish, what your budget's going to allow you to do, what your team is capable of. A lot of times I'll add the list of like what camera equipment I have, the locations, the people who I have accessible to me, and using all of this, it's going to keep helping me refine the script. I'll be like, there'll be certain parts that are going to be too complicated, or we're going to need too many people. So I tell it like, yeah, we want a very, very small crew, very small footprint. So how can we make sure we can accomplish this with the minimum amount of people? So all of these prompting techniques and all of these things I'm using constantly for writing stories, for planning shoots, for developing a lot of the story ideas and the content that I work on. Okay, it's supposed to go another hour, but we're gonna just kind of wrap this up. So let's see, what's next? So the first part was the most important part that I kind of wanted to share in the prompt creating and the concept of communication and how you properly communicate your ideas, how you formulate a cohesive idea with lots of context, and ultimately you set your goals of what you're trying to accomplish, and you use that method to get the most out of the AI. So I just kind of wanted to touch on the production pipeline and all of the different aspects of development and how you can use AI through the whole stage to take advantage of it. So from the very beginning, you have your development, you have your ideas, your log lines, your treatments. These are the pitches. You have to come up, you have to sell your idea, you have to work with a team. I mean, ideally, like that's what you're doing. Like this, it's a collaborative industry. And then even when you're just creating something by yourself, it's important that you really conceptualize the idea and understand what you're getting yourself into. Because if you do have an idea, sometimes you have to narrow that scope so that you're not setting goals that are too high and you're not making it too hard for you to succeed. So in the development part, you're taking that idea and you're making sure that it's reasonable. It's something that your team is capable of doing, that you're, as a creator, capable of making, that the company is willing to invest in. And once you have that, you can start moving into the whole production pipeline. So yeah, in the first part, using the brainstorming, right? Like I said, again, giving me just multiple ideas and kind of bouncing things off of me. Concept art, like that's one of the really nice things about generative AI is you're able to visualize things now and kind of get an idea of the look of something that you want. And dialogue alternatives, different types of conversations, building all of that. You can do it at a very, very fast pace now using the AI. In pre-production, this is where we started using it quite a lot for the scheduling, the locations, a lot of the optimizing, figuring out how to make the most use of your resources. It's a time-consuming planning part of pre-production. Your producer typically has to look at the script. It's the job of your first AD to come up with these schedules. You need to have these discussions about, who's available when, what location's available when, how many pages are we going to be shooting on that day. A lot of this is a very, very time-consuming, collaborative thing that the AI can kind of help facilitate. You can give it your constraints, and it can give you kind of a rough breakdown, and it gives you a good starting point where you start to discuss things, and it might actually even catch some issues that you may get overlooked by the team like it says, it'll say like, oh, you're shooting, 80 pages on this one day, and the team's like, we're not going to be able to do that. So we need to book this location for 2 days because it's just not going to work what we have here. Nobody realized that there was that much content there. So the pre-production process benefits a lot from its ability to parse data and information and give it to you in a very digestible way. One of the tools that I'm using constantly now is Notebook LM, a Google tool where it's designed to teach you and help you learn and study things, but by giving it and it bases everything off of what you give it. So in terms of being like an LLM, it's not as creative and out of the box. It's very focused and tailored to your goals and what you're working on. So you can give it documents, you can give it links to videos, and then you can have a conversation based on the content that you've given it. It has a very cool little feature also that creates podcasts. So if you did want to like learn about something, you can give it some documents and links to those videos, and it'll create this AI-generated podcast where these two people are talking, and you can listen to it just on your free time and digest that information and learn through that conversation that's generated by the AI. So then we get into the actual production. When we're shooting, the directing, troubleshooting. These are all, again, it's a very valuable tool for just information. It's very good for problem solving. And as long as you give it the context and the goals, it can help you figure out problems. Again, it's a resource. It's providing you these information, so it's another way of you figuring something out without having to take too many risks, right? In post-production, like that's where we're seeing a lot of the visual tools. Nano Banana now being one of like a very, very powerful image editor, and then being able to take that into a video generator. So that's just giving us so much power, but already built into our traditional tools. We're getting a lot of things that are helping us. Able to extend clips in Adobe Premiere. That was a feature that was recently rolled out. Masking was a long time, very time-consuming VFX work. It was just frame by frame, cutting out the images, separating backgrounds, and it's becoming pretty much a non-issue. I think for film standards, it's still maybe not quite there yet, but for everything else, it gets the job done so easily. You can also do so much testing with the lighting, how you want to light something, how you want something to look. Again, just the ability to get results quickly from an AI opens the door for you to just be creative and understand what you're working with. And yeah, ultimately marketing, getting your film seen, your work seen, understanding now that I made this, how do I get it out there? That's one of the biggest challenges as independent creators, someone who just made something on their own. They don't know how to gain an audience, how to market their picture, how to describe what they created. And this is a tool that it definitely helps. I constantly, when I was working in the game industry, that was why I said a lot of people underestimate the budget for what you're creating, because in the end, if you spent all your money to create the most amazing game in the world, if nobody knows it exists, you might as well have never made it. It's never going to be played. So you have to invest in the marketing. You have to get it shown. You have to get it out there. You have to get people to play it. And so marketing is something that's very often overlooked, and it's difficult. It's a very specific skill set that you have to have, but fortunately, AI is giving us a lot of tools to help be able to do that by ourselves. So, yes, you can use it for our brainstorming, our concept art, dialogues, creative benefits. Again, it's accelerating the development. It's enhancing creativity by giving you more ideas. It's streamlining that workflow by already setting some of the framework that your team's going to need to be able to pick up on. And again, the best practices is that clear communication, being very specific in your instructions, and again, iteration, fixing, going back, looking at what, if it didn't give you what you wanted, let's go back and try again. Oh, okay. So, yeah, this was the reflecting on your prompts. I think I've probably said this quite a few times. Yeah, it is important to, again, assume responsibility for the output, because you can't just put the blame on the AI when it's not giving you what you expected. You have to understand that you're the big common denominator in that output, and if it's really just not working, it's not doing what you're trying to get it to do, you got to go back and look at what are, maybe my expectations are wrong, maybe my approach is wrong, maybe I'm not providing sufficient references, and that's going to make you better always as well. Everything that we do in life that leads to improvement requires feedback. It requires understanding of the mistake. It requires us to reflect and be able to see what was wrong, or what we could change, or what we could do better. Because otherwise we're just perpetually doing the same thing and expecting different results. And so, yeah, having that clear prompt is going to lead to better collaboration between you and the AI. It's going to save your time. You're going to get much higher quality outputs. And again, you're going to have much fewer revisions. So ultimately, this is one of the things that we're facing the dilemma of, what is AI doing to our art and our craft? And I feel like this is one of the things that it will definitely take the AI a long time to be able to do what we do, because what I just mentioned about that feedback loop, the thing is, our audience and the people that we create for as filmmakers are other humans. And we know we're connected to them. We know what they experience. We know what they feel. Well, what we're doing as storytellers is we're trying to evoke that feeling, that response. That's why we tell the story. If a story doesn't have that connection to the audience, if it's not making them feel anything, it's not much of a story. There's not really any substance there. And this is one of the key things that generative AI videos lack, is there's very little intent in each frame and each thing that it's creating. Much like how I explained what an LLM and a neural network is, image generation works in a very, very similar way. It's predicting the next pixel, essentially. So it's a predictive model. And it also very dependent on data. For example, that was one of the very early issues that we had with AI images, and it couldn't create hands. And so we gave it a lot of references for hands, but each image of a hand could be very, very different, because you could have the 5 fingers, you could have a fist that has no fingers, you could have the hand at an angle, you see only 3 of the fingers, you could have hands intertwined, and 10 fingers. So it doesn't understand any of this. It's, again, just predicting what should be next. And it does create models of what these pixels should be and how they should be arranged. So it learns the face, right? So this is when you're training a very specific LoRa on a human face, a very specific person. It's looking at all of the different angles of the person, and it's picking up on the distance between their eyes, the textures of their skin, the width of their mouth, the shape of their nose. And it's, again, this is the training. It's being exposed to that many, many, many times. And so that's how it learns what this person looks like. So ultimately, that training data, it's not an understanding of the person. It's just data, and it knows, again, the relationship between things, but again, there isn't any intent in what it's doing. So when a director is telling a story and he's working with his DP to frame it, everything's very, very intentional. The placement of the light, the focal depth, the performance that you're getting out of the actor it's intentional. It's meant to evoke a feeling. It's meant to make the audience sympathetic to the character. It's meant to make the audience angry or annoyed at the character. This is the art that we do and our advantage is, again, the immediate feedback. Because as humans, we can see the performance, and we know right away if it did what it was supposed to do. Again, the AI is generating frames, but again, it's just predicting what should most likely be next. It's not doing it with very specific intent to evoke an emotion. And one of the things that humans are just insanely good at is recognizing other humans. And we've been around each other for so long. And this is where you get into the concept of the uncanny valley. And so the more you get realistic and you get closer to making it look right, the easier it is for our eyes to actually notice when something's off and something's wrong. So in the big scope of film and storytelling, we're still going to need our intervention. We need us as storytellers to create the performance and bring out the performance and tell our stories. But AI is definitely going to be there to help us do this. So it is very much the collaborative effort between us and the AI moving forward to be able to do more and to tell more and accomplish it. And just, well, again, something that like YouTube was able to bring to people was it gave them the platform. In the days before, you had to be part of the industry. You had to be in the know. You had to be in the right family to be able to get into film, to get into a TV show. But now, anybody who puts in the work and the effort can have their own channel, have their own show. And likewise, AI is facilitating us to just do more and more. And so it's going to change things. It's going to make things easier to do. It's going to create a whole new wave of types of shows and entertainment. And so, yeah, it's a little washed out, but ultimately, yes, the human director is going to be important for a while to be able to create the vision, create the emotions, and give our content intent. And our AI is going to help us with the execution. It's going to give us more options and ideas, and it's going to support us. So, let's see. I think that's the same. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Okay. So, yeah, backstories, dialogue, developing your dialogue. That's a fun thing to do with ChatGPT now. You can have a conversation with it. You can give it a role and say you're trying to build one of your characters, and you're going to tell it, like, so you're going to be this crazy science lady who thinks she invented time travel, and I'm going to be confronting you about fraud, and we're going to talk about it. And so you act out that conversation with the AI in real time, and you can hear the dialogue, you can test it, you can play with it. Yeah, there's so much we can kind of start to build and enhance our stories and our ideas, enhancing our creative process, inspiring new ideas. So that's going to be the end of my talk. Thank you guys very much. I hope you guys are able to take away from this to please, use the tools to do your research, learn more, enhance your skill sets, and be able to build really, really great stories, and then just go out and tell them. Thank you.
โอเคค่ะขอบคุณค่ะขอเสียงปรบมือด้วยค่ะ Thank you very much and I have some gift for you today. Okay. Please wait a moment.